For the longest time, June has been one of the biggest months in gaming. Now, historically, that was characterized by E3, but due to the Great Pestilence, as most of you know, E3 was dissolved and disbanded. And instead, these days, in 2024, we get a number of diverse shows showing off different types of games that are oftentimes shown directly by developers and publishers, as opposed to having one grand event to show off everything. There are a few exceptions, such as the Summer Games Fest, but in general, June is a really big month for games. Okay, as many of you know, I mostly focus on RPGs on this channel, and so I want to talk about what we could be looking out for with respect to RPGs this June in the next few weeks with all the shows. Now, I think there are two big titles, first and foremost, that we should be looking out for. Big in the sense of we as individuals who appreciate RPGs could be looking out for this, appreciate it, want to find out more. The first one goes without saying, I've talked a lot about it up until now, is Dragon Age Dreadwolf. Probably BioWare's last chance of making it in this world, so to speak, but there are other reasons to look forward to it. If you play through Dragon Age 1, Origins, 2, and 3, Inquisition, then you know that the lore of Thedas is pretty impressive. There's a lot going on there, and the Inquisition ends on a big cliffhanger, a very important one, something that is quite literally world-changing, earth-shattering, that sort of thing. And that earth-shattering nature of the event is to be found in the title, Dragon Age Dreadwolf. If you've never played the games, then I don't want to spoil too much, but for those of you who know, Dragon Age Dreadwolf tells you all you need to know about what the main premise or plot of the game is going to be about. And it's been making the rounds that something I've already mentioned, the BioWare team is very pleased or happy with the results thus far, but more importantly, we are almost certainly going to see in-game footage of the game in the next 2 weeks or so. Now, because this game is a make it or break it situation for BioWare, that footage better be pretty impressive. We had seen some footage years ago, some alpha or pre-alpha footage that was pretty lackluster, but let's hope that it's changed quite a bit since then. And despite my skepticism and despite my relative pessimism towards the project, i.e., I don't think that BioWare necessarily still has the chops they used to in order to make a really good Dragon Age game, I want it to succeed. I like the setting of Dragon Age. I love Dragon Age Origins. I must have something like 6, 7, or 8 playthroughs. I don't know anymore. The other games less so, but I still find the lore compelling, and I want to know what's going to happen next. So that's definitely on my radar. Hopefully it will be a return to BioWare roots, but as we all know, we have every right to be skeptical, and I guess we'll have to see it to believe it, or to put it more aptly, play it to believe it. Okay, the other big title, big relatively speaking of course, to look forward to look out for is Avowed. Now, Avowed, as many of you know, is sort of a spiritual continuation of the Pillars of Eternity series made by Obsidian, although those games were of course isometric, and as we all know, isometric games are not really for most people. And when we first heard about Avowed back in 2018, there was this majestic epic trailer that reminded us of something akin to Skyrim. And basically the idea that everyone had gotten to their heads was that Obsidian was making their own version of Skyrim. But when we finally saw footage of this game, the so-called Skyrim made by Obsidian, it didn't look anything like that, which led many of us to draw the conclusion that essentially they had been downsized or the budget had been cut. The footage we have seen of Avowed looks very cartoony. It looks a lot less impressive than what we might have expected. That said, if we accept Avowed on its own terms, in terms of being a AA game that is contained with a very specific purpose behind it, I think it still has the potential of being a good game. My big issue is about advertising and game advertising and how well it's being advertised and projected to the world. That will be a separate video hopefully in the future, because as we all know, for example, one of the reasons why Tyranny did very poorly, allegedly at least, was because the advertising sucked for it. And I don't want the same thing to happen to Avowed. I absolutely love the Pillars of Eternity universe, it's one of my favorites, so for me it's an absolutely no-brainer to look forward to Avowed and be on the lookout for it. They call it an action RPG, I guess we'll see what it's like, but I do hope that they continue at the very least with all the lore that they built up in the first 2 Pillars games. That is absolutely indispensable. After all, I think beyond gameplay, beyond classes, magic, and all these other things, the most important thing about Eora, about the Pillars of Eternity universe, is the lore, and the specific nature of the gods with their relationship to mortals and so on. I'm not going to offer too many spoilers beyond that. Those of you in the know about Pillars of Eternity know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the gods. And hopefully, with luck, I think it is likely that we will find out more about Avowed and that we will see more content that gives us hope as opposed to skepticism and pessimism. So Dragon Age Dreadwolf and Avowed, those seem poised to almost certainly be on the list of games to be shown over the next 2 weeks. And then there are other games that we probably don't have a guarantee of being shown, but nonetheless would be pretty interesting to find out something about, such as The Witcher 4. Will CD Projekt Red show us at least a teaser of content, or even a cinematic, for example, of the up-and-coming Witcher game? I don't personally think that's impossible, and I think it definitely would be desirable, because the last Witcher game came out in 2015, which is a relatively long time ago, and we all want to see what they've been cooking up. The next Witcher game will be in the Unreal Engine 5. It's not related to Geralt, it's something else. We just call it The Witcher 4 as a placeholder. We don't actually have the name available, but that's definitely something that I would like to hear about more. I'm hoping that at the very least we get some kind of cinematic. It doesn't have to be actual gameplay, something to whet our appetites. And even with something like The Witcher, I don't think it's unreasonable to be a bit skeptical. As many of you know, I'll talk about this in a bit, a lot of the head honchos, the people that were responsible for designing quests that were really great in Witcher 3, have left the studio, and I think the nature of the CD Projekt Red studio has changed quite a bit. So the question remains then as to whether or not CD Projekt Red can bring the same quality to the table as they used to. And of course, there are other games we might catch wind of. I'm pretty sure there's a good chance that we might see some footage of The Outer Worlds 2, maybe in the Xbox Showcase. Now, I did play The Outer Worlds, but I have to say I was very unimpressed. It was very bland, very generic. It wasn't a bad game, but it wasn't really a standout game either. So I just thought, okay. But apparently it did sell well, and so there was a demand for Outer Worlds 2. My assumption going in here, as much as we'll see anything regarding The Outer Worlds 2, is that Microsoft has given Obsidian a bigger budget for the second game, because I believe the first game did really well, and I certainly respect people who like that. It's kind of like Fallout in space, but not really. And with luck, the second one will be a lot less bland and, to be perfectly blunt, boring than the first one. Then there are titles that are very, very unlikely to be shown, if anything. I've covered one of them, potentially. Dawnwalker by Rebel Wolves, the Rebels from CD Projekt Red, who I kind of regard as the real CD Projekt Red team these days. They're no nonsense, they want to make a gritty, proper RPG, and what's more, it appears to be a vampire-based RPG, which means I cannot resist that. The premise of it seems very impressive. I really want to see more of that, but as far as I'm aware, they've only been working on the game for a little over 2 years, so I don't think we're going to hear much from Rebel Wolves or the project Dawnwalker. I definitely plan on covering that game very extensively in the future, both before it's released and after it's released. We are long overdue a bloody, no pun intended, good vampire game we've been denied again and again and again. Which reminds me that, yeah, maybe something about Masquerade Bloodlines 2 will be shown, but let's be honest, who cares? It looks really, really bad. From the footage they've shown and what they've done with the game, I think it's going to be a total flop, so Masquerade Bloodlines 2, maybe a miracle will happen, but I'm not really looking forward to it much. And I'm sure there are other RPG titles that I'm leaving out here, which is why I'm going to ask you in the comment section to let me know if there are any RPGs I left out, any ones that you want to see covered or have footage shown of at one of these shows during the month of June. Do let me know. And as always, thank you for tuning in. If you can leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, it really helps out the channel and be much appreciated. I will check you out next time. Until then, bye-bye for now.